Hello, everyone. We are Seth and Saundra Dunn. Welcome to another awkward conversation. This is a time when we just sit and have a conversation and we talk about things that are awkward, things that might be awkward between us.
Like ladies who are still wearing pantyhose.
Oh, geez. What's up with that? I mean, I don't know
kidding.
anything about that.
Although I did see somebody wearing pantyhose the other day, and I thought, okay.
Yeah, it's definitely awkward.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, we could make it really awkward.
We could.
I won't go
Yeah.
there.
Okay. And we also talk about things that are maybe just awkward in culture or awkward in Christianity. There's plenty of awkward things. And I think even today's topic, there might be a little bit, between us, but I'm thinking of lots of ways that today's topic is just awkward in lots of ways, in the culture. So we're talking about privacy value or value, value for privacy might be a better way to say that, or independence. And the ins and outs of that, right?
Yeah. So
I don't know. Do you want to jump in? I mean, I see you've got more scripture than I do and so forth. I've got tons of thoughts of where we could go with this conversation. And so jump in if you want. Or do you want me to kind of?
No, I think you should start.
Okay. All right.
I did something kind of goofy. I did not completely understand the topic per se. I still have good stuff to share, and I think it will still apply. Okay. But because I went kind of a different route, I'm going to let you.
And that still may fall into the conversation. But I was thinking about there are people that want time alone. Yes. And there are people that don't want time alone. And I think both of those can have nuances, right? Maybe somebody wants too much time alone because they're doing naughty things, right? Or they're afraid of people, or there's damage or wounding, or they're
trying
selfish,
to hide out, trying to numb out, trying to just avoid all kind of difficult stuff.
Right. And then there are those that don't want any time alone for some of the same reasons.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Because of But then you've got the whole thing. This is where I was like, we can jump around, because in this time together, you can unpack some of these in pretty good depth, but maybe we'll just jump around, because you've got introvert and extrovert.
Sure.
And then you've got, I think it's pretty accepted now that there are people that are a blend of those two. I think you're a blend of introvert, extrovert. I am definitely an introvert.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm not good in social settings. I love, interacting with people and stuff, but it's draining to me. Mm-hmm. So then I look for alone time to replenish. Mm-hmm. So that can be the healthy side.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's important that we talk about, you probably know there are couples who do absolutely everything together, don't do anything alone. And then there are those couples who do so much alone that you wonder, is their marriage okay? Mm. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about. But it doesn't just apply in marriage. Those of you who are not married, maybe you really love to just be a little hermit in your apartment at home alone.
Right.
Or maybe you love to be out all the time because you can't stand to be alone. Yeah. And I think when we're healthy, we can do both. And it's good to be able to sit at home alone, quiet. Can you be at home, no TV, no movie, no music going on? Can you handle that? Or are your thoughts so crazy that you silence them by being busy? Because a lot of people are like that. And I think rather than just submitting to that and going, that's just what I do, I think it's worth investigating, because I think you'll learn things about yourself and ways that you can become healthier. Yeah. So I just wanted to share, I think we're talking about both sides, whether you're sitting at home alone or you're just always going, that can be very unhealthy as well.
Right.
But I think we're talking about how to handle that independence within marriage somewhat.
Sure. Well, I mean, certainly we've had that experience, right? We're both really pretty independent people. And therefore we would fall more, I think, to that side of a couple that does a little less together, although we do a lot together too. I mean, we've done a lot of business and a lot of ministry. Look at her.
We just got done with a full week.
We did.
Nonstop together.
And not just together, but with lots of other people. So we both are looking at this next week or 2 or 3 or month of a little less.
Close off, yeah.
And it's interesting, because I think this is where I think personality plays in, but also being aware of your personal health, can I say? Because, it can look very much the same if a person's healthy or not, And if you just observe how it's playing out, does that make sense? You don't necessarily know if that person's healthy in seeking their alone time or not.
We can't make those judgments because maybe, like right now, Seth and I have been together nonstop for a week, and our social has been really high.
Yeah.
So I think he's at the same place. For me, I'm like, I just leave me alone. Like, I just want to be left alone. Don't talk to me. Don't just let me be quiet. And I don't think that's unhealthy. I think it is for me that high extrovert, high introvert, where I just need some of that downtime to refresh and recoup and move forward.
And I totally get that. And I'm in a similar spot, although I think I am mostly introvert. I just get constantly drained by that. Right. So I too am, look for those moments.
But you don't, in my perspective, between you and I, you don't seem to care if we have time alone or not, apart from each other. I feel like you would be happy to just always be together.
Oh, okay. So I think maybe that's where the awkward conversations come in, because I think for me, there's always that thing there of wanting to make sure I'm not missing. And so this might be a whole nother conversation and an image into my personality, but I want to care for you well. And I think sometimes I don't know what that means. So then I'm not going to go for that time alone because I'm afraid I'm not caring for you. Right. And so there's where some communication comes in. Right. And it's helpful.
That's what I was thinking. Right? You could ask.
Well, there's a novel idea, because it's interesting. Here's a whole other angle to this conversation is I don't feel drained being around you. You know why?
Why?
Let me take that back a little bit. She is draining sometimes. There are other things I could bring up. But I think mostly why is because I feel safe. So like if I feel like I need to say to you, I just need some time. I just need, okay, for example, there have been times when I have said to you, I'm going to leave for 2 days, right? Mm-hmm. Because I just need downtime. Mm-hmm. It's nothing wrong with her, nothing wrong with me. It's just the pace of life maybe or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you're cool with that.
Absolutely.
So there's safety there.
I usually am like,
that's huge.
Inside, I'm usually like.
She's leaving next week, is it? Is it next week?
No, the week after.
Oh, the week after. She'll be gone for a week. And that doesn't hurt me.
But I would say, I think at times our kids have been like, are you guys okay? Like, you're going to go away for how long and do what? And are you okay? And, it's understandable how it looks on the outside, like it might be concerning. But I think neither one of us are in a position where, we want to end up separated. Or, as much as I enjoy time alone, I don't want you to move out permanently.
Right.
I'm not.
I do know. Yes.
And I think it's just interesting how everybody functions. And I think that is part of what we wanted to talk about is it's okay.
Find that rhythm.
That rhythm. To know what you need, what's healthy for you, and do that as long as there's communication. Mm-hmm. Now, because we're both fairly independent, it works fairly well for us.
It does.
But if you were more dependent, or if I was more dependent, and I'm not talking about being codependent, I'm just saying, if you had the idea in your head that marriage meant we do everything together all the time, we would be having more difficulties. And
you would have to find a different plan.
You have to find a compromise, right? Because that's marriage. So you always are having to find something that works for both of you. Mm-hmm. But it would be way more difficult.
So I have found that in business and ministry. Okay. Right. So you and I, for the most part, found a pretty good rhythm. We have we bump into things and whatever. I don't ask enough questions at times. I mean, there's those issues.
We have a deal that I just think this is funny, so I'm going to share it.
I wonder which deal this is.
I don't think very many couples have this deal, and I think most of anybody would be like, what? No.
What deal?
But here's the deal. I told Seth one time, listen, if I ever call you and say, I'm out, not like out of the marriage, but I'm out. I'm leaving. I've just got to go somewhere. You don't need to know where. You don't need to know how long. just let me go. At least I'll be in touch. I'll let you know I'm safe, etc. But let me have the time to just like, there are times where I get in my car and I'm like, I think I might just keep driving.
Just drive.
And so I think, and he's like, okay, deal, but same for me then. And I was like, okay. It took me a minute to be like, wait. And then I'm like, wait, you can't have it and then not give it, right? But so we have that deal. Now, neither one of us have ever used it, but I think we get time apart from each other.
Yeah, well, like recently we did a trip for our birthdays and Christmas, right?
Yes.
We celebrated each other and all of that event in one trip.
Yes.
I left, 2 days before you?
Yeah.
and then she showed up, you know, and that's a little different, but it's similar. And I think I want to hit this again because I think this is so key. We have that deal and it works for us because I trust her. Right. If at some point along the line you broke that trust, or if both ways, right? If I broke that trust, the deal would change.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you kind of have to figure out, like I mentioned, I've had, like with business and ministry, there have been times where I was working with very different personalities than what our mix is. And there were people that needed a lot more communication, a lot more encouragement, a lot more whatever. And it wasn't bad. It was just different.
Yeah.
So the parameters and the deals and how it plays out is different.
Right.
And I think this is an important conversation because I do think the opinions are all over the place. Because like you said, I think there are people that would hear that deal between us and think, oh, well, that's not good.
It's indicative of a bad marriage.
Well, and maybe in their situation it would be.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So I think finding those value points, finding those places where it does work, and that would be true with lots of issues, but certainly this independence thing and this privacy value.
Yeah.
I think it's important just to play that out in the way those personalities need it to.
And again, I think it requires communication and conversation, and it requires a lot of security.
Right.
If I say to Seth, I got to get out, he could totally take that personal and go, crap,
sure.
What have I not been doing? What have I not been giving? What have I not done that she needs?
I could totally do that. Yeah.
Now she's out, Yeah.
But
because he's secure and because I'm secure, when we have those moments where one of us is going or whatever for whatever length of time, we're still in communication. It's not like, it's not, I think because of the security and because we've had communication about it works.
It does.
For the most part. I mean, we still have moments, Yeah.
Yeah, we do. But it does work. And I don't want to shift gears too much, but I was just thinking about, we see examples of Jesus pulling away.
Yeah.
There were times when there was a crowd willing to listen to him, a crowd willing to gather. And in our sense of value, you wouldn't ever turn that away.
No. Like in the Western mindset, you better work.
No,
you've got something good to share. You better get out there and share it.
Yeah.
You would never just walk away from the crowd and be like, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
No.
But Jesus did, and he did it for the purpose, I think, of infilling and refreshing. He also did it for the purpose of communication with his Father.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So I wonder if we don't have real clear evidence of this, although I think it's a reasonable thing to assume that Jesus was like, I need to know, I need to be sure that I'm hearing my Father's voice and that I am about doing what my Father is instructing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure at this moment, so I'm going to pull away and find out or make sure, never mind that there's a crowd standing there.
Yeah.
Fascinating to me, because I think in terms of this conversation, we don't think of Jesus often. It's funny because I think oftentimes we think Jesus was poor, vagabond that just kind of wandered around. The scriptures say he didn't have a place to lay his head. That doesn't mean he didn't have a house and that he didn't have a physical place to lay his head. Right? He had resources. He had a whole organization. I mean, he had the disciples. Everybody had to eat, had to stay somewhere, had to, had to move from place to place.
Was treasurer.
They obviously had stuff to treasure.
They had roles within them.
Right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that Jesus just didn't have anything going on. He did, and yet he pulled away. And he said no to the crowd. Now, I don't know, in our world, that would be saying no to offerings and so forth. I have no idea how that played out for him, but he had such a sense of value for pulling away in that privacy, in that moment of needing that infilling.
Yeah.
So it's like so many things. It can't be about selfishness. It can't be about unhealth in order to play out well. It has to be wholesome and healthy and be about purpose and mission and focus. And that purpose and mission might be, I truly want to be the best man I can be for you and for others in my other roles and for the sake of the kingdom and the gospel. And if part of what I need is those moments, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think when it comes to in relationship, I think communication is key, but I think this kind of goes along with, and we've briefly, I think, touched on, for example, within that independence thing, do you have separate checking accounts? Is it okay for me to get tattoos when that's not necessarily his thing? What was another one? Just any kind of big money decisions, like trying to learn how to make these kinds of big decisions together, communication. But I also think, and these were the scriptures I pulled up, was 1 Corinthians 13, love. Like, how can I love myself in the sense of doing things that I feel and need are important, but also love him and give. And there is just that space of compromise. If you need separate checking in order to be at peace, have separate checking.
Yeah.
In Romans 12, it talks about, as far as relies on you, live at peace with all men. So what do you have to do? What do you need to do and or give in order to have that space of peace? And I think, so we have 1 Corinthians 13 that talks about love. Romans 12, Romans 12, 9 through the end of the chapter gives loads of advice of how to treat people, how to deal with people. Yeah. So if you're brave, go read it and do it. And then Matthew 18, where it talks about, is it Matthew 18? Yes, where it talks about forgiving 70 times 7. And I think within a marriage, that's kind of one of the hardest things is being able to forgive in the sense of because you're forgiving all the time, right? Because we are always failing. Sure. And so that being able to consistently forgive, even when it feels like it's the same thing and we're not gaining any ground and whatever. But those were the scriptures I had. And I think they all have to do with how do you work together? And if one of you is super independent and one of you is less independent, how do you make that work? Yeah. Look at 1 Corinthians 13. Look at Romans 12. Look at Matthew 18. And if you will both look at those scriptures and walk that out, and while you're doing that, communicate, you'll get there. Yeah. To that space where there is the ability to know what to do, how often to do it, how much, all of that. Yeah. I love that you brought up some of these very practical things. Money, of course, is a big one, but the tattoos, for you, it's fun if you let it. It's fun to navigate these things because a tattoo would never have been on my radar as far as for you or for me, right? It just wasn't. It wasn't the artistic thing. I think she does it for the art, the beauty of it. I also think she does it just for it's just got a little bit of an edge to it. I don't know if I'm right with that or not, but it's something that you can say, this expresses me, and it does it in a way that actually our society today is fairly accepting of them. Yeah. It wasn't even 15 years ago, I would say, as accepting, but I think you would have done it either way. Yeah. And so I personally do it so that if my body ever gets, blown up, you can identify at least apart from a tattoo.
Oh, look, there's her arm. That's man. Why. Did we say that? I don't know if we should have said that. But I want to...
There's the edge.
Before she went there, I want to...
That's not why I do it, by the way.
No, but I want to complete a thought there. If you haven't seen it, and you get a chance when you're in Saundra's presence at some point, she has one on her leg that is absolutely stunning. A tattoo. So it's fascinating to me that when you can work together and and let each other in their own independence express those things, there is a way to figure it out and navigate it together. Does that make sense? And in that, I think there's always going to be some sense of pleasure, some sense of enjoyment. I mean, I do get enjoyment out of seeing her enjoy things that maybe I'm like, I have no clue why you enjoy that, but I'm glad you do. And so me, the sense of value and enjoyment is in that.
Yeah.
So I think navigating all that, while awkward and clumsy and takes effort, it's worth it between a married couple. It's worth it in business. It's worth it in ministry. I mean, guys, my goodness, I could spend time, well, we both could, unpacking mission stories, missionary stories, and telling you of things that we've bumped into on the mission field that you're like, oh my goodness, this is so backward and even so wrong. And yet you look at it and you're like, you know what? It's their culture. I'm not here to change your culture. I'm here to share a loving, amazing, caring God with you. And the way that plays out in their culture can be offensive, can be lots of things that if you respect independence, you respect that culture, you respect what that is in them, you can look past some of those things. Yeah. And that's true in relationships. It's true in business. It's true in so many ways. But man, I just have to say real quick, it has to come back to healthy situations and trust in so many ways.
And I think one of the things you said about going into other countries is you're not trying to change the culture. And I think that is huge in a relationship.
Sure, it is.
Whether it's at your job or with a friend or with a spouse. Like, my job and my goal is not to change Seth, not to fix him. My job is to help him see himself become who God made him to be. It's not for me to change him to be like me or to change him to do what I think he should or what I want him to do. I'm not fixing, I'm not changing. I'm investigating what his life looks like in his best self, but like in the way that God created him to be. And I think that's what we're talking about, even in, talking about being independent or dependent, whatever, extrovert, introvert. It's not about changing somebody. It's about helping them become who God made them to be. And within that, I'm not determining who God made you to be. You get to decide that. Yeah. And I get to just support you in that. Yeah. And so I think that's like the frosting on the cake of this discussion. Yeah, that's really good. And I hope that in having this discussion, I'm hoping you're able to take this and say, oh, interesting. So in this part of my life, here's how I can apply this. Yeah. I hope that, because I do feel like I have bumped into a good number of people over the years where this was an issue. Oh yeah. And oftentimes especially struggle. They do. Yeah. And to some degrees we have it easy in that we're both independent. I'm sure in those situations where one is and one isn't. And that can be just purely because of personality or again because of woundings or whatever. It probably makes things a little more challenging. But I'm convinced that if we'll just care enough for one another, love each other, listen to the Father and be willing to, to navigate it through. Respecting these things in each other can be really good. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Well, so there you go. There you go. A little bit of conversation around the value for privacy and independence, and I hope it's helped you. We love bringing you these conversations, and we will continue to do so because it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I was just going to say, we touched on a lot of stuff. Like we did. When we talk about separate bank account, we talk about tattoos, we talk about leaving and being apart from each other, being separated and coming back together. And so I think we've talked a lot about all of those, so it'd be good to probably come in and dive a little bit deeper on those. And we'll probably do that. So. Yeah, and certainly you can do that. That's part of the beauty behind this is we're trying to get conversation going and maybe things that you've been afraid to talk about. Maybe you can be less afraid to have these conversations with your spouse or with those around you or with yourself for that matter. Yeah. Right. So hopefully we've primed the pump in a firmer term. I would say feel free to email, reach out. Absolutely. Sure, comment on the video. But if you've got stuff you're like, I need to talk about this a little bit more
Yeah.
in depth.
Yeah.
Either one of us are here available. We would love to have that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
help you out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, God bless you all. It's been fun to have one more conversation with you. So until next time, this has been another awkward conversation. God bless.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Good one. Yeah, seriously though, help us out. Like this stuff. We want more and more people to hear the goodness of God through the conversations that we have. And so we invite you in. Like,
Comment.
and subscribe.